Hi, welcome to the Hat of Many Things with me, your host, Mike, and my co-host,
Tom.
That is a type of drum, you are correct. Today's episode is about music. Isn't that right, Tom?
Yes, indeed it is.
We'll be pulling the subject at the end out of a hi-hat.
I don't know how badly I'm going to have to Photoshop my head to make it look like I'm wearing a hi-hat, but I definitely am not wearing a hi-hat.
It's like a top hat, isn't it? It's just higher.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Excuse the terrible pun. I'm sure there will be more of them eventually. Yeah, we're talking about music today, and we're talking about music that we enjoy, music that perhaps we don't enjoy. A very cursory oversight with many subcategories. I don't think it's possible to just have a podcast on music that covers it. It's thousands of years of history.
You could have several different podcasts all about individual subgenres. We're not going to cover that all in one episode.
Tom, without opening a book or Googling it, what is the definition of music? How do you define music?
Rhythm and tone provided either via voice or instruments that people enjoy. I mean, yeah, I don't know how it's officially described. I've never thought to look it up in the dictionary.
So, a rhythm or tone, I mean, there's melody as well, I guess. There's many aspects to music. So, I'm now going to do the Googling, since you are usually our little Google guru. I'm going to define music. Voice or instrumental sounds, or both, combined in such a way as to produce beauty of form, harmony, and expression of emotion.
That's a way better way of putting it, but then it is a dictionary.
It is. English is your first language. You should be better at this.
Bad at thinking of the words to describe things with.
Say music in German.
Music. Is it? Yeah, it is.
Say it in French.
Musique.
See, it's pretty universal.
Well, at least in the kind of Latin-based languages, I think the word's very similar.
They're the only ones that matter, aren't they? No one's listening to us in Arabic.
Well, I mean, they can listen to us in Arabic, but we're speaking English. There's no automatic translation.
I mean, where do you start on a subject like music, Tom? Please enlighten me, because I've got no idea. It's going to be a very long pause in this podcast if you don't enlighten me.
I feel strategies you can do, you can either describe the individual genres and then talk about music you like from those genres, talk about music you like or don't like just as a starting point, or maybe talk about your experiences with music.
Well, I certainly couldn't talk about the history of music because I'm not remotely well educated on the subject enough for that. Music started in 2000 BC. Like, fuck knows.
I think music probably has existed as long as humans have existed, if not longer.
In some form or another, possibly. It depends how you define human, but that's a whole other debate. Like Homo sapiens.
I mean, birds make birdsong, and as
do they though? Are they singing, or is that just how it sounds to a human ear? True. For all we know, right? We could be getting up in the morning, we hear this beautiful bird song, and it's just like Jeff going, "Fuck off, Dave! Fuck off, Dave! Dave, that's mine! Fuck off, Dave!" Like we've got no fucking idea, mate.
Eddie Izzard says that is like all bird song is territorial. So a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square. It was actually being like, "Fuck off out of Berkeley Square! It's mine."
I've never heard that sketch before, but you've just killed it. I'm not funny anymore because it's been done before. Originality is dead and you've torn my heart out.
It is a throwaway line in the middle of his sketch. Anyway.
Well, it was a throwaway line in the middle of a podcast until you extrapolated it. Cheers. So, yeah, I think one place you can start with music, and one thing that I think is fairly safe to say is that as a lot of people might expand their mind for music as they get older, I think music is really pivotal to a great many teenagers. In particular, and I think more so than it is to most adults. I think that music comes with it, in the modern era, culture and subculture. Teenagers will often use music to identify, and to a lesser extent adults, and to define their sense of self. I mean, growing up, I was a skater kid or a mosher, and to this day, despite my massively eclectic range of music that I listen to, my favourite, the stuff that really makes me happy inside, is still stuff from South California in the late 90s, early 2000s, third wave ska and pop punk. I grew up on it, I loved it. Gave me a sense of identity then and a massive nostalgia kick now. Even the stuff that's derivative of it. I mean, what were you listening to as a teenager, Tom?
Well, yeah, it was a mix. I spent quite a while listening to...
I imagine it was Kinky Boots.
Kinky Boots? No, I missed out on Kinky Boots at the time. Some friends are into it, but I haven't yet seen Kinky Boots. It's on my list. No, I was very kind of into... I basically discovered my dad's classic rock collection and basically worked through that for a period and only really listened to stuff that ended up on the telly that was that was like my peer group were into. And then through a few friends, I slowly got into metal and Tenacious D and things like that. And that's kind of, as I was like mid-teens to late teens, that was the kind of stuff.
Just to clarify, Tenacious D and metal are not the same.
No, that's why I said metal, then Tenacious D. You know, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've always been a fan of a strong melody, and so for a while I think that's why I resisted metal. I didn't understand metal properly until I started listening to it.
We'll get onto metal as a full subject later, because there's a lot to talk about.
I can talk about that then.
See, I find it interesting, as a teenager I got really into my pop punk and my rock, and like you say, it's stuff that your peers listened to at the time. But then my peers all moved away from it, and I didn't, which meant I suddenly didn't fit in with that peer group, and it was quite a substantial shift in the social dynamic. But what amuses me when I look back on it is that I only started listening to that stuff at the beginning of secondary school. In primary school, I was a huge fan of 2 60s mixtapes that I had. And I was a big Elvis fan as a kid.
I don't think there's documentary evidence of this, but I definitely used to love the Beach Boys as a young child. And if my parents don't have a photo of me pretending to surf around the front room to Surfing USA, that was definitely a thing that happened. Whether or not there's any evidence of it now.
See, for me at that age, it was Pinball Was It by The Who.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of songs that I could remember the lyrics and the melodies to. I couldn't tell you who sung them or what the songs were called. I just remember having the mixtape. Mellow Yellow.
Yep, they call me Mellow Yellow. I can't remember who does that.
Too. There was a Hellfire. Yeah, the fire.
Oh, I am the god of hellfire, and I bring you fire. That's by The Crazy World of Arthur Brown. I love that song.
Bye Bye Blackberry Way. Have you heard that one? Goodbye Blackberry Way.
Yes, I have heard it, but I couldn't place the artist.
Just that was the stuff I grew up on with the mixtape. And I do remember really enjoying, as a child, Gina G's Ooh Ah just a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, I remember, I had an experience of my parent, it was mostly like road trips, stuff like that, playing music, and that's how I got into 60s, 70s, and even a bit of 80s music. I wasn't really listening to anything that was aimed at my age group. I remember specifically, I think it was year 3, everyone got into the Spice Girls, and I was just like, no, that's too modern, and I didn't like it.
Too modern. I don't think that was the issue with Spice Girls, bro.
No, I mean, I just didn't like them, and I remember it was like me, my teacher, and maybe one other kid who were like, no, they're rubbish, and there was some school
year
play
3 hipster.
Yeah, year 3 hipster, yeah.
I think Spice Girls are kind of like Pokemon, okay? So it's okay to like them as a child. It is really not okay to like them as a teenager, and then it's okay to like them again as an adult.
I think you didn't hang out with the same kind of friendship group as I did during your teenage years. There was definitely a fair amount of Pokemon.
I suppose as teenagers, there wasn't a ton of Pokemon in my friendship group. It's kind of like, that comic strip of children playing Pokemon, and then teenagers in school going, oh, you're playing Pokemon, nerd. And then at university, I was like, oh my god, Pokemon.
Yeah.
That was my experience. That was my lived experience.
I mean, I think I didn't play Pokemon for a bit at uni, but it was definitely a thing that I've played most of the way through my life because I hung out with a very nerdy group of friends.
But back to music, like Spice Girls, I use that analogy because as a kid, they're just fun. And then as a teenager, no, they're just manufactured crappy pop. There's nothing genuine there. There's nothing authentic there. It's just... And then as an adult, you know what? You can take a step back, remove yourself from that and go, actually, as far as just pop goes, it's just catchy, fun pop. A lot of Spice Girl music is still fun if you just take it for what it is.
Yeah. And I think you've touched on something there, and you've kind of mentioned it a bit with talking about friendship groups and stuff like that. When you're under the age of 10, really, you're not really your own person. You're kind of like a younger version of your parents. When you're in your teenage years, you're going through an evolution into a full adult, and part of that is finding your place in the world, and that's where the kind of friendship groups that come around music.
You say that, but as a kid, my mum used to put on reggae CDs and Motorhead, and I didn't like either of those things at that age. And my dad always listened to like either Beach Boys style rock and roll, or like full on Michael Bolton crooning love song.
It's a fair mix.
Now, as an adult, I can appreciate a little bit of crooning, but as a teenager, I was like, or even as a little kid, I was like, please turn this off. Like when you're 8, the last thing you want to hear is when a man loves a woman.
Yeah. I think we had a very old kind of, I think it was called the And Friends album. Like it was a list of people's name and friends, and it had all of those kind of famous, like it had a mixture of James Bond songs, it had That's Amore and things like that on it. I remember that being like a Sunday lunch CD Dad would put on occasionally.
I don't think either of my parents have ever been quite as much into music as I was. I think as a teenager, it was everything to me. Like, I would be going to a gig every other week, at least, I would say, in Manchester. A lot of my money would get spent on it. I met I met two of my girlfriends at gigs. I used to go down, I used to go there, I used to escape into this sort of fantasy rock and roll world for a night, and it would just everything would melt. All my problems at school and growing up would just melt away, and I think the first time I ever stepped into a live gig, I turned to my best friend and said, I'm home. Like, it just felt right. And unfortunately, that's something I don't get to experience anymore, due to my disabilities. I can't stand for the length of a gig, never mind being in the crowd. You still get to enjoy the performance objectively, you still get to passively enjoy it. You get to sit on the balcony or stand at the back and look down and see them perform and hear the music, but you don't get to absorb the atmosphere in the same way. You're not a part of it.
Yeah.
You're outside of it.
I mean, so I would say I'm really into my music. I did a fair amount of performance in that I was in a choir, and a lot of that stuff was kind of churchy stuff, which I appreciate in a certain way, but it's not the kind of music you listen to unwind necessarily, or at least it wasn't when I was a teenager. And then I was very into listening to music, but I had not experienced going to a gig at all until I think I was 18, 19 at uni. So I just didn't have that experience when I was younger. I just wasn't with that group. Some of my friends did go to gigs, but it was very much like sixth form. A few of them did, and it wasn't a thing. But I do remember several of my friends were always going in to get the new CD releases on... I can't remember what day of the week it was. Must have been like a Thursday or a Friday. They would go into Croydon and go to the local music shop and buy whatever new stuff was out, and then we'd end up listening to it in our sixth form common room.
Do you not think it's amazing, though, how it can really shape people's identity?
Oh, yeah.
Their outward appearance, their inward identity. How many people, me included, will have, at some point in their life, changed the way they look to fit a musical genre. And how a lot of that even carries on into adulthood to a lesser extent.
Well, I think, so music elicits very strong feelings.
It's so tribal that it's incredible.
Yeah, and it elicits strong feelings in people, feelings of joy for the most part, or, there are obviously sad songs, but like a big thing you're doing is trying to find something that speaks to you, and so you look up to those bands and their style, and that kind of, when you're mid-teens, that really is what a lot of people style themselves on.
And especially when you style yourself on that as a teenager, the instinct to reject anything that is not that is so strong.
Oh yeah, I mean, school life is all about being in your tribe and not liking whatever the other tribes are.
Or not having a tribe, as the case may be.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel a bit dispossessed at that age as well. And so that's where something like music, where you can, dressing differently, putting yourself into that.
As you've said, you're finding out who you are, so it kind of gives you something to be while you work out the rest. So what was the first CD you ever bought? Or CD and or tape?
I bought 2 CDs at the same time. The first 2 CDs I bought, both singles, I still own them, and they were Freestyler and The Real Slim Shady.
See, I wasn't allowed The Real Slim Shady.
I don't think my parents knew I'd bought it, and I don't think I was asked for ID.
I asked my mum if I could have it, and she listened to her friend's copy of it and was just like, no, absolutely not. I do remember that the first CD I ever bought, my friend's dad owns a record shop, and I bought from Double 4 Records in Marple a copy of Drunk Enough to Dance by Bowling for Soup. And I knew every word to every line in every song.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the lyrics to Freestyler now, or even probably The Real Slim Shady, so...
Well, I can tell you that he was asked if he would please stand up.
Yeah, I remember that bit. And I remember it having it was one of those first CDs with a music video embedded on the CD that you could watch if you had a computer. I think it didn't work in DVD players, if I recall. And I remember watching that video a lot because that was... just like, I didn't have MTV or anything, so I didn't have a way of watching music videos easily. This is pre-YouTube, so...
Oh, yeah, and then you'd go to someone's house that did have MTV, and you would ignore MTV and put on Kerrang! And then you'd get annoyed because there was only one rock music channel, and they would play the same songs over and over, and it would get frustrating. Yeah.
I remember... I don't know if it was on Kerrang! There was definitely a TV at school in one of the break rooms that had we could modify. Well, it wasn't just on the news or something. You could turn it on to something during breaks, and I think that was the first time I discovered who My Chemical Romance were and saw all their kind of songs. And I was not into that at the time. I was just like, what is this rubbish?
So whilst we got onto the subject of MTV, I mean, the 80s was known as the MTV era, or the MTV generation almost, so late 70s and early 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How much do we think that music videos changed music?
I heard someone saying on another podcast the other day that any change to the music industry does affect the music, but I haven't really studied or looked into what happened with music video. I think it probably increased the exposure, like being able to see it on TV.
Massively.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing it did. And it also led to these kind of, like, it led to this kind of, it's easier if you're seeing those kind of bands on TV to copy their look and do the kind of tribal thing we were talking about. I mean, that's not to say there weren't the mods in the 60s, but I think that made it, as it becomes available to a wider audience. Yeah, it's quicker and it spreads and you get, brain's gone blank, word for, like, fads. Yeah, you get, like, musical fads are quicker.
And I think the other really important thing to realise with MTV, etc., is that it changed music in a great many ways from the radio to almost back what it was before the radio, when it was all live. And it meant that to succeed, you had to have a look that stood out, not just the sound. And you had to have a sort of personality, and that to be something different. And this is where you got your David Bowies, your hair metal, your glam, your shock rock, all these people that were doing something to stand out, be it musically or visually. And it changed music from just an auditory form of entertainment to an audio-visual form of entertainment.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, stimulating more senses, is simply more exciting for many people. And I think that's why, sometimes they call it the MTV generation, and the profound effect that it did have. It's
interesting that I would say now, with the availability of streaming services, I tend to listen and not watch music a lot more, because I don't just have MTV on in my house or anything like that. I remember that being a big thing at, like, parties, and nowadays I think you just have music on in the background. I don't know if that's partly because I've aged as well. I don't know if younger people are still doing that, but I feel like when I go and look for music videos, it's normally for the older ones or one that I've heard is good, but I'm not discovering music videos in the same way as I used to.
See, I have been. I only picked up Spotify 2 weeks ago.
Right.
I've been remarkably resistant to it, in that I have, for the very longest time, honestly, pirated music, right? And I'll admit that. It's not that I didn't want to pay for it, it's that I didn't want to pay for Spotify just to get rid of the adverts.
Right, yeah.
And I didn't want to use a service with adverts.
See, I had Spotify. I got into Spotify very early on, 2008, I think, when you could get a very limited advert service with unlimited plays because it was new. And then I started paying for it in about 2010. But when I realised I couldn't afford it at the time because I was still a student, I stopped paying, and they reverted me to, like, whatever the standard was then. And that made I think you got a limit of 5 plays per track. And suddenly I just couldn't listen to music on repeat and stuff. So yeah, I stopped using it. But then Google Play Music came along and said, you can upload something like 35,000 tracks of your own for free. And if you want, you can pay for us. And that was, that got me in. I uploaded all of the music I had, mostly ripped from CDs. Stopped using iTunes. My iPod sat in the car for many years with just the same music on it. And then I started paying for it when there was some deal for like 3 months. And I went, oh, this is great. Now I can just ask Google to play whatever I want.
So I was consciously finding new music every few months by going onto YouTube, finding songs or bands that I liked through the record labels, etc., and then looking in the recommended bar down the side and just opening up random bands and discovering some that I liked, some that I didn't like. But I found that I've switched to Spotify. It does a really good job of giving you a daily playlist of stuff based on what's in your library.
Yeah, I've heard that's very good.
That's in the similar genres, and that is actually really good. I spent a whole day listening to German punk that I didn't understand a word of because I was like, I like the sound of this band, and just clicked the band's radio, and I had a great time.
There's a song that was on repeat last year in Berlin when I was there on holiday, and it's just brilliantly ridiculous. It's like a German folk band, but we didn't hear any of the music. We just saw the video over and over again on the tube, and I'll bung that in the show notes. It's silly, but yeah, Google Play Music's not quite the same. There isn't this like daily playlist, but if you pick a track and start radio on that track, it will find similar tracks, and I've been discovering bands and tracks that way.
So what are some key things that may attract you to the sound of a band or to a song? You've mentioned melody's one I agree on.
Yeah, I think I can happily listen to like an instrumental that's brilliant without caring that it hasn't got any lyrics. And eventually as I started, I don't listen to a lot of death metal and stuff like that, but when you can really hear the kind of artistry in the guitar, then that will make up for lyrics that you can't understand or necessarily hear. I'm also, as a singer, a big fan of fun and interesting lyrics. So I think I don't need both of those together, but both of those things kind of come into what I like.
Are you the very model of a modern Major General?
That's one of my favourite silly songs, and the various versions of, the Elements song and stuff like that are brilliant.
So I'm a big fan of melodies, like you. If I can't sort of hum the bars as they're going along without having heard it before, that's probably not a great sign. I tend to like being able to pick up as I go along, but there are more complex things I do like. I'm not really into just a beat or just a rhythm. Like, you can have a sick beat or a sick rhythm, but it needs to have more to it than that. So genres that rely heavily just on the beat or on the rhythm, I don't tend to get heavily into. So there's a lot of, discounting, say, Papa Roach and Linkin Park, I didn't get into a ton of nu metal, because nu metal was so rhythm and beat orientated that a lot of it does lack melody, and that is a part of the genre. See, I'd say melody is hugely important to me. I've always listened to a lot of things for the lyrics. I've only started really listening to instrumental music in the last couple of years. I mean, what do you think of active listening versus passive listening?
So I do a lot of passive listening at work, and certain genres fit that better. Classical music is great because you can just kind of make it background noise, especially when you know a track.
Agreed.
Yeah. And also, interestingly, I find metal and power metal is really good because I don't tend to sing along to something like that.
Power metal, yes. When it's just a giant fret wank.
Yes. Yeah. Stuff like that is really good for getting me focused, and I know that type of music helps me focus.
I think it's because the hooks in power metal are always very simple. So it very complicated guitar work, but you put on Hearts on Fire. Who did Hearts on Fire?
Don't know that one, I don't think. I mean, I might know when I hear it. It's not like Dragon Force, is it?
It's similar to Dragon Force, but it's not them. Hammerfall. Do you know the track?
I'm just going to check, but I think I do. Oh, have you sent me a link? Perfect. Oh, yeah. Did we not play this the other day during Vampire? Didn't someone send this?
I certainly didn't.
I think Simon did. I'm not sure.
But yeah, the chorus is hearts on fire, burning, burning with desire, and you can hum along to it. This doesn't require any concentration. Whereas, do you know what I think? The other side of the equation, a band that I think are absolutely incredible for active listening, but I cannot listen to passively, to the point where if I'm listening to it passively, it annoys me and I turn it off. Muse.
Right, okay, yeah, no, I can see that. I mean,
it's actually just really distracting if it's on in the background.
I think it depends on the Muse track for me, but I find for active listening, things I don't want to have as passive listening are definitely things where I might sing along to them, because there's a possibility I'll do that, and obviously that's a bit awkward in the office. I think, like Knights of Sidonia, for example, is a song I remember singing a lot with mates. In fact, being the kind of group we were, we called ourselves the Knights of Croydonia for a while. Terrible thing to do when you're a kid. But like stuff like that, I can see why it's distracting, but I don't think it applies to all their tracks. But like, I couldn't put on their whole album.
I think Time is running out and put on the background.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I'd have to make a specific playlist.
Yes. Whereas Knights of Sidonia, interestingly enough, going back to music videos, is a song that I did not like for a long time. And I'd always seen it with a music video. And I found that there are some songs that are improved by the video. Right? Some songs are better with the video. Some songs are worse.
I've watched it with the video and listened to it without, but I think the reason for me, that was a real kind of bonding moment for me and my dad, because I was getting into new music, and that was one of the first things I introduced him to that he also liked. So it was listening to that track happened, at home and in the car. And then, basically every track on that album, it has that bit of nostalgia, that kind of link with my dad that makes it awesome.
But do you not find that sometimes, like, the difference between active and passive listening is enormous? So a band I would say that I liked but grew to love through active listening was... fucking awkward time to forget the name of the band, isn't it?
Yeah.
Motion City Soundtrack, there we go, before I even finished typing. Motion City Soundtrack.
I don't think I've heard of them.
You've not heard of Motion City Soundtrack? Oh boy, do I have a treat for you. So he wrote his first, I think, 3 albums off his face on all sorts of meds, all sorts of drugs, there was heavy weed usage, other drug usage, heavy drinking, and then he wrote his 4th album, which was called My Dinosaur Life, completely sober.
I think I've heard of that album name, though.
So I would say if there's a song people have heard by them, it's going to be Everything Is Alright, which was on the first Saints Row soundtrack, funnily enough.
Then I've probably heard it, because I've played the first Saints Row.
So if you just give it a little...
I definitely feel like I've heard this. Yeah, I'm pretty certain I've heard that, but it falls into that kind of genre of, I don't know when this track came out, but like it falls into that genre of kind of 2000s to 2010, where there was a lot of that kind of American style. I would say it's American style. I don't know how you describe it.
And then a track from My Dinosaur Life, possibly even the opening track actually, would be this one, which I'm sending you, which is called A Life Less Ordinary.
I've definitely heard of this track, so I must have heard of this album, but I didn't know the name of the band, artist.
It was just so, when I really listened to it rather than passively listened to it, I realised how authentic it was. And authenticity is something that my housemate Adam, who's got his masters in studying popular music, says it does not matter what a musician does as long as they're authentic. Like the consumer has to connect to it on some level, which is why so many manufactured acts have such a short lifespan. And I think I really listened to it and I realised how much this guy was just talking about his actual mental health issues on the track and laying it bare. And to extrapolate that even further, I would say if we're going to talk about emotion in music, I do not think the conversation can be had without mentioning Blue October. Are you familiar with Blue October?
The name rings a bell, but I think you might have mentioned it on that drive we had back from Nationals.
Probably, yeah.
We had a long talk about music then.
They had one famous song.
Is it Home, Fear or Hate Me? Because those are the first three hits.
Hate Me.
Hate Me.
And he references it in a later album. He says, my first and only Billboard hit was supposed to pay for my 2-year-old's college. I should have hit it so you couldn't spend that shit.
I don't recognise the track, so I think I recognise the name from you mentioning them before, but that'd be it.
But in terms of raw emotion in music, I cannot think of a single artist I have encountered that puts himself out there as much as Justin Fairfield from Blue October. He has very severe mental health issues that his wife used to help her gain custody, using his music career as an example of his mental instability, using his own songs against him. His brother is in the band, and every time he gets too depressed, his brother will make him write an album if he's becoming too unstable to get it all out. So every album he produces is therapy.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And in terms of putting himself out there and being particularly raw and emotional, it went so far as his record label would not publish one of his albums. He has an album, one of my favourite albums of all time, called Any Man in America, about his custody battle for his daughter.
I think you specifically mentioned this when we talked about it previously, yeah.
And his record label would not publish it for fear of being sued.
Wow, okay, yeah.
By the wife. So he self-published it. It is incredibly raw. There is a song on it called The Flight, where he mentions having a blackout and waking up in an airport and turning himself into the police, saying that he doesn't know where he is. I'll find the exact lyrical passage now, where he says, Mr. Officer, I know who I am. The rest of me, my memory, I just don't understand. I do know that I'm unsafe man with a plan of getting on a plane, fly away to kill a man.
Wow, okay, yeah.
Got a history of, it says, like a freight train threat to myself, got a history of blackouts, bad mental health. And the cops, take him aside and say, pat him down, and they put him in a cell and say you did the right thing, and he gets released because he's not committed a crime. But he has songs where he will talk about killing his ex-wife's partner or boyfriend at the time, and her, stalking them, all sorts of things that, we would hope he never does, but that it's the fact that he can put that into a song and release it and be that raw with his own mental health and his own issues. It amazes me every time I listen to an album by him.
I listen to music for a lot of different things. I'm not sure everything I listen to would count as authentic in that kind of way.
Oh no, certainly not. God, you should hear some of the crap I listen to.
But I mean, that's not all there is to authenticity, I think, is what I mean. Like, you as long as it's not super manufactured, if someone has put their heart and soul into that thing, whether it's a silly comedy track or, similarly to what you're talking about, I don't know if you've seen the TV show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
No, but I've seen clips of Rachel Bloom before she made that, and I did enjoy her work.
Yeah, I mean, she's someone who has her own set of issues. I mean, she did a song about OCD that's very funny, but also, it's coming from a thing she's had to deal with. And then in the show, they have three or four songs every week. and some of them are properly dark. I mean, others are just silly and happy and fun, and they're always parodying a famous like musical style as well. It's interesting how people's authenticity is displayed in different ways through their music.
Completely agree. Yeah, so Blue October is one very specific example, a very intense emotional authenticity. Tenacious D is an example of something that is frankly ridiculous, but it's authentic. You know that this is just two guys goofing around.
Yeah.
This isn't someone being told to behave that way. This is just two guys and the things they find funny. More examples of authenticity, I mean, we can go to, various forms of metal or hip-hop, but if you... Okay, so let's compare authenticity, yeah? If we're going to compare, say, Dr. Dre to Iggy Azalea, there's a massive gap in authenticity there. Iggy Azalea is just an Australian girl that liked a bit of hip-hop and got pumped up to an artist level by a label, and Dr. Dre is someone who's lived the things he's rapped about. Yeah,
there's always the really interesting... I think the tales behind music are very interesting as well. For example, Bowie signed up with the record label when he was very early on, and they completely screwed him over on the terms. So,
have you ever heard his first album? Oh god, it's so bad.
Well, this is the thing. He basically got screwed over. So he released this really bad. I think he had maybe 1 or 2 albums he had to release with them. So he released these really bad albums, and he kept all the cool stuff he was thinking up. And then as soon as he was off that label, he was like, "Boom, here you go," and dropped. I can't remember if it was Ziggy Stardust or something like that, but it was just completely different and ridiculous and amazing. And everyone was like, "Wow, this guy." So yeah, there's all kind of stories about that kind of stuff. And I think
Kesha,
yeah, she's had an interesting story, because when I first heard some of her music, I just dismissed it because it wasn't my kind of thing.
I liked her early stuff. It was just silly and fun, but her new stuff is power.
Yeah, I can't remember. I heard a track of hers and I just went, "Oh, this is kind of silly." Wasn't as bad as Friday, but it was in my head. It fit in that kind of category of kind of boring modern music that I don't like. Being an old codger. No, I heard some of her more recent stuff, and obviously she's been through very trying times dealing with them. Was there sexual harassment stuff, wasn't there? And
yes,
and
so the allegation was that she had been raped by her producer, and she was contractually tied to work with that producer, and the record label would not release her from that obligation. Rather than punish him because there was no way of proving the accusation, they decided to enforce her contractual terms.
So yeah, obviously she's had an awful time.
Yeah.
She's come through it.
More power to that.
I'm not saying people should go and have an awful life so they can write good music, but there is a tendency for people who have been through trying times to write their best music after they've been through that trying time. There's
also a very upsetting correlation between drug abuse and good music.
Yes.
It's a very sad correlation.
Well, there's a lot of... I can't remember, is it 27 or something? That there's that age where so many old rock stars died, and it's so many people died that same movie stars because they were on drugs or whatever, and they just, your body can't take it after.
I think it's because, as you mentioned earlier, music tends to be tied very much into emotions, be they positive or negative emotions, be it happiness, sadness, anger, whatever it is, and perhaps people going through some form of substance abuse or other mental traumas, etc., experience far greater swings of emotion. They experience a lot of these emotions at far greater intensities.
Yeah.
And that's where perhaps some of this comes from.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think I've got anything to add to that. That's...
I mean, so what are you listening to at the minute? Obviously not the second, you're listening to me talk.
This list I've put in front of you of various bands and songs is what I've listened to this week, basically. The band I most recently discovered, you'll notice on there, doesn't have any songs under it, because I'm not at the point where I've...
Is this Fish?
Fish. So that's Fish spelt with a PH, not with an F, because if you spell it with an F, you're talking about the guy from Marillion, which is a band I got introduced to by someone in Manchester. Fish got mentioned fairly recently on the ATP podcast that I listened to, and they were just so effusive about it. I went, I wonder if that's on Google Play Music. And it is. They're kind of... They've been going for so many years, I think probably 30 years at this point, and they're kind of prog rock band. And I made a playlist of all of their studio albums I listened to over the last few weeks, and that was 16 and a half hours, I think.
For anyone not familiar with prog rock...
Oh yes, progressive
rock. It's the most
rock.
Pretentious form of rock.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing they do is they do a lot of live shows, playing their old catalogue, but songs that may have been 4 or 5 minutes when they played them on a studio album become 20, 25 minutes when they do them live, and they're always experimenting with what they're playing.
Welcome to prog rock. That's every prog rock band ever.
Yes, but the key thing that Fish does is they release a official recording of pretty much every single concert they put on, and you can sign up on their website to just get all of that music, and a lot of it...
Free?
No, you have to pay for it. But like, you can sign up for a subscription service where you're getting like all these different versions.
They're not quite as hilarious as Dream Theater then, who actively have encouraged bootlegging throughout their entire career.
No, yeah, they haven't done that as far as I'm aware.
They would encourage fans to just turn up with video cameras and distribute it.
I mean, that's one way to get your sound out there.
It's Dream Theater, mate. It's a band that solely consists of some of the greatest players of their instruments that are out there. Do you know Dream Theater very much?
I wouldn't say I know them well, but whenever I've listened to their stuff, I've enjoyed it.
So John Petrucci on the guitars and Mike Portnoy was on the drums for a great many years.
I know Mike Portnoy. What was he famous from? Someone before Dream Theater?
No, but he did spend a number of years in Avenged Sevenfold after the death of the Rev.
That's where I've probably heard about him.
He was the Rev's favourite drummer.
Right. Yeah.
He's unbelievable. I've never seen anyone play a kit that large and just. You can comfortably sit two people behind it playing drums simultaneously, and he uses a wheelie chair to get around it. It's ridiculous.
That's awesome. I can imagine that. I'll have to find a video.
John Petrucci has been invited on, is it the G3 tour? Which is a tour hosted by... Let me find out who it's hosted by. It's an invitational guitar tour.
Right. G3 because there's 3 guitarists?
Hosted by Joey Satriani.
Right.
And he always has 2 guest guitarists.
Yeah.
And John Petrucci has been invited on it more than any other guitarist.
Right.
And if you don't know who Joe Satriani is, then, well, you should probably look him up, particularly if you like guitar music. He's an incredibly prolific, famous guitar player.
I definitely recognise the name. I'm sure someone has sent me links to his stuff before. He's not the guy who did the guitar in Bill and Ted, is he? Like the absolutely ridiculous guitar piece, and everyone's like, lots of people won't know his name because, unless you're into your music, and he's done really ridiculous stuff like that.
Yes, he is.
There you go. I knew I'd heard of him from somewhere. I think he was in a Cracked article about people you might not have heard of who are exceptional.
He's unbelievable. He's fantastic. Absolutely brilliant musician. And John Petrucci is up there with him. But that is Dream Theater in a nutshell. I would say, bizarrely, and for such a big band, the one area that might hold Dream Theater back sometimes is the vocals, which aren't as typical as you'd like, and they are quite metal. But yeah, so we're going to talk about genres a bit, and some things we do like. Sorry, let's have a look at this list first. So, you're a big fan of the Black Mages, I see. Is this because you may have played Final Fantasy games?
See, yes. I mean, yeah, obviously that's there, but I didn't play Final Fantasy as a kid because I didn't have a PlayStation, and I didn't...
We can't be friends anymore, I'm sorry. This partnership is over.
You say that every week over something.
You upset me on a regular basis, Tom. I'm just perpetually disappointed in you. I'm going to make a great parent.
It was in the time where most people couldn't afford to have a second console, so you had your console, you stuck with it. I was into Nintendo, I had an N64 and then a GameCube. So those are the consoles after Nintendo lost the Final Fantasy franchise. So
those are some poor choices, comparatively speaking.
The N64 is an amazing console.
It is, but it is objectively worse than the PlayStation 1.
No, there's a difference. I would say the N64 is a significantly better console, but it didn't have the range of games of the PlayStation and therefore wasn't as much of a commercial success. Those are different things.
How can it be a better console if it's got worse games?
Because, I mean, the console is technically better.
It's not the Dreamcast, mate. Yeah. The console is not technically better. The whole reason that the Final Fantasy franchise moved to Sony is because a compact disc could hold more information than a cartridge.
I don't think it's entirely due to that reason. There were some contractual reasons.
That is it. That is the reason. That's the reason that they switched. Because they could not fit the amount of data they needed to fit on a cartridge. That's why no one uses cartridges anymore.
I mean, you say that the Nintendo Switch essentially uses cartridges, but...
Well, yeah, I suppose that's because we've moved into
SD cards. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, that's by the by. Like, I'm big into game music in general, but a lot of the game music from when we were a kid is 8-bit, 16-bit. That's not something you would necessarily listen to a lot of at a time. Like, it's nice to hear the odd track. I mean, Guile's theme, as we know, goes with everything, and I'll happily listen to. But obviously, it's the kind of reorchestrated versions and stuff like that I really love. The great thing about the Black Mages is it is Nobuo Uematsu, the guy who wrote the music.
Who's amazing,
and he was like, by the way, I'm just going to play all this music with my cool metal band I invented.
So if anyone does not know Nobuo Uematsu, I will fanboy over him all day. His atmospheric game music, I think he's arguably the greatest game composer. I can't think of anything else that comes close to Final Fantasy's musical composition except for The Legend of Zelda, Metal Gear Solid, and Halo.
Yeah, those are all solid choices.
Those are the only things in video game music that are as on par and iconic as some of the tracks that Nobuo has done. And the fact that he's gone and made a band for fun and recreated it all in large band format, it's just awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. And I just want to add in here, like, if people think, oh, you're talking about game music, has it been recognised? Well, yes. His Aeris's theme from Final Fantasy VII.
Dun, 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 dun.
That was the first piece of music orchestrated for a game to get into the Classic FM chart.
Absolutely amazing piece of music. I've seen it done by the orchestra.
Yeah, it's amazing. That track is amazing. Doesn't suit itself to the style of the Black Mages, really. So it's not surprising they haven't done a heavy metal cover of that I'm aware of. But
well, not all of their covers are heavy metal. I mean,
no, but they are predominantly. I would class them as metal.
So some of the tracks you've listed here, yeah. Maybe I'm a Lion. I would call more of an industrial than metal side.
Yep. Yeah. No, that one I've put in there. Just
maybe I'm a Lion.
Yeah, it literally goes. Maybe I'm a Lion, and every time it just gets me in. Yeah, every time I get into it, just on that, I'm like,
Vamo
yes.
alla Flamenca you've got there is not metal at all.
No, that definitely isn't. And the reason I got into that is the first Final Fantasy game I properly played when my housemates were like...
Final Fantasy 9?
Yeah. They were like, you need to play games because you missed out on Final Fantasy. Here's FF9. And it's the music, the instrumental music that plays during the Chocobo searching game where you find map pieces. And then this version, this was definitely my most listened to track during revision because it was a nice instrumental piece and it was quite upbeat. And if I was either feeling a bit down because I was having to do loads of revision at uni or just, needed something to focus me, I would just listen to that track on repeat. So it was always top of my most played list on iTunes at the time.
Right, that explains why I didn't recognise it as the Chocobo tune. So you are correct, it is played during Chocobo Hot and Cold, but that's not the first time in the game it's played.
Okay.
It's first played during the sword fight mini-game between Blanc and Zidane, when they are entertaining all of the nobles, and that is what I always recognise it from.
Right, because I had friends who'd obviously played the games to death several years before me, I got a lot of advice about stuff I should do early on. So they were just like, quick, go get all those map pieces in Hot and Cold and then go do this. Don't accidentally get killed by this dragon over there and things like that, which was a bit like, having a game guide, but 3 friends who were kind of vicariously playing through me, which was a lot of fun. I totally enjoyed it. I didn't feel like they were spoiling the game for me.
I mean, you've also got Dancing Mad and Darkness and Starlight on there, which are from earlier games.
So I made a point. Dancing Mad I just really enjoy as a track. It's like a large organ piece. Is that Final
Fantasy 4 or 6?
I can't remember if they're both from 6. Darkness and Starlight is definitely 6. I think
Darkness and Starlight is the opera one, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I would definitely play a very short clip from it here.
西軍と東軍の戦いは日増しに激しくなっていった。
Because it's just the amazingness of this deep booming.
Maria.
Well, but even before that, there's that brilliant bit where it's just a deep booming Japanese voice narrating, and then it goes into this kind of faux Latin opera. And in the original game, because I went back and played FF6, one Winter Inmus, which is the gaming holiday, if people aren't aware, started by a webcomic. I took 2 days off work and just played FF6, and I got to that bit and I was just blown away by it, and I was like, oh, I've already heard this song, but as a metal version. And yeah, it's just, that is so good. And in fact, they named one of their albums after that track, because it's...
Yes, because it's Kefka's tune, isn't it? Dancing Mad. But then, Final Fantasy 7, I think, for me, is the iconic music. Like you've got Dancing Mad and Darkness Starlight from 6, you've got Vamo alla Flamenca from 9, you've got Maybe I'm a Lion from 8, but start to finish, the soundtrack to 7, Tifa's theme, Aeris theme, Cloud's theme, Cosmo Canyon, dun 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 dun. It's just, oh my god, that whole soundtrack.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff from 7.
And the boss battle tune, that's got to be the most iconic piece of Final Fantasy music, other than maybe the Chocobo tune, the end of battle theme.
That was my text alert for years. Yeah.
That's my ringtone. And One Winged Angel.
One Winged Angel, yes.
Oh my god, what an ominous piece of music.
All that music is great, but the reason I haven't put it under Black Mages, other than the fact they haven't necessarily done all of those, is that the kind of FF7 soundtrack I will listen to, other than the really nice piano versions that exist, is the one from Advent Children, where they redid all of those properly.
Yeah, oh my god.
And
yes.
that soundtrack on its own, I'll just listen to. It's amazing.
Have you heard the FF7 rap album by Mega Ran?
I do not think I have, but I think I'm in for a treat.
I have a signed copy of it.
Wow, okay. Have you got a link to some of it on YouTube to listen to, or is?
Yeah, I'm gonna get the track list, and I'll let you pick a track. In fact, just pick a Final Fantasy VII track, and I'll find you the Black Materia version.
Well, let's go for One Winged Angel since we've just mentioned it.
This guy does such a good job of remixing the original tracks.
Well, that's already interesting. He'd just be like, yeah, over the top of it. That's really cool.
That whole album is worth listening to. I wouldn't say it's amazing. It's worth listening to for a Final Fantasy fan over a rap fan, but someone has taken it and just done a good job and had fun with it.
Yeah, no, that's I've not heard of that before, but that's definitely a fun track, and I have to have a listen to it out of the podcast. I can mention it another time.
So yeah, I love that. But yeah, no, Black Mages and video game music in general, I would recommend it. I would recommend going to see as much of it as possible at the orchestra. Distant Worlds is the big orchestral tour that they do for Nobuo Uematsu's music.
Yeah, I really want to go see that. I've not seen it yet.
I've not seen it, but I have seen at the... What's the big one in London called that I went?
The big event or big venue?
Venue.
The Royal Albert Hall? Or
no.
Like a big classical venue, or just a big venue in general? Like the National Opera, National Gallery, National Theatre, I mean.
But yeah, no, I went to see one there which did some Final Fantasy tracks, some Fire Emblem tracks, a couple of basically like a JRPG music event, and it was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. Although, just a brief aside, having said that I can't really go to gigs in the same way I used to anymore, I am going to go see Skindred very soon, but once again, I can't participate in the way I used to. I found that as a result, I really enjoy now sitting at the orchestra, because due to my fibromyalgia and my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, everybody sat down like me. Everyone's enjoying it passively like me. They're all listening and watching. No one's up there. It's not about the atmosphere. It's about just the music. And I actually find that I enjoy it more than a gig now, just because of my energy levels being so low.
Yeah.
It doesn't require as much of me as a participant.
One thing I definitely recommend for you, because you're still up in Manchester, the Lowry puts on some really excellent orchestral stuff. I mean, you have to know what you're looking for, but... Yeah,
I've not been to anything other than plays at the Lowry. I've been to see some Shakespeare there, but I haven't been there for music. For music, I generally went to... is it the Albert Hall in Manchester as well?
I can't remember. There is the Albert Hall. There's also the orchestra place, which is great. The Halle Orchestra is amazing, and I went to see them with a friend. I've seen the Halle. And they called it Round the World, so it was basically all the big name, famous classical pieces you've heard of. And it was really
We
good.
went to see them do movie themes.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love that. Yeah.
It really was. So, other genres. I mean, you've put metal here. You want to talk about metal. Talk about metal. He's just for clarification, right? I know I talk more than you sometimes, but he's put deep dive into metal and then listed Iron Maiden, Metallica, and Symphony X. This is apparently considered deep dive into metal. I hope you've all got your scuba gear going, because we are going real deep. Right? We've already been past fish earlier in the podcast. Yeah. Right, and now we're going deep.
I put deep dive into metal because I figured as soon as I put metal on there, you would also want to discuss it at length.
Metal. Excellent.
I think the thing for me, so like I said, I was listening to a lot of my dad's music when I was early teens, and one of the first things I got into, so I came into metal via hard rock, people like The Who have also got on my list, who go a lot harder in their later years, and I got in via hard rock, and then I think I heard Run to the Hills was the first song I heard, and I was like, oh, this is really good. And yeah, someone's like, oh, it says metal band Iron Maiden. I was like, well, that's not what I thought metal was, because I'd got the entire genre of metal confused with just death metal.
I think an awful lot of people do.
Yeah, I think that's quite common. And so through my friends who were basically always quoting Tenacious D lyrics at each other, and sat in quite a few classes with me, we were all like in the same group.
You cannot kill the metal. The metal will live on.
Oh yeah, so they said stuff like that, and I was like, oh, so do you guys listen to metal? And these two guys, both called James, great friends, they got me into Maiden, Metallica, and that kind of stuff. It was also through them that I properly discovered the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Just as an aside, like that was a big band for me. And
for clarification, not metal.
Yeah, for clarification, not metal. But I'd heard of them. I knew they were famous, but it wasn't until I knew them that they were like, oh, well, Stadium Arcadium's just come out. You've got to listen to this new album and stuff like that. So they
Stadium Arcadium should have been halved in length.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, there are definitely like some really good tracks on both discs, but yeah, you could put them onto one track.
They should have just put it into. They should have put all the good stuff onto one CD and released the rest as a B-side. They watered down that album with stuff that wasn't good enough to be on it.
It's just that was the Californication kind of came out just before I was getting into them.
Californication.
Like, that came out just before I got into them, and then Stadium Arcadium was like the first album that came out once I was aware of who they really were.
I think I maybe got into them a bit earlier than you then, because for me it was Don't Stop was coming out, so that would have been the album before.
I don't remember that album coming out, so I definitely was after you.
Don't Stop and All Around the World were coming out. Although to this day, I think what's your favourite Chili's track? I'll see if it's the same as mine.
I don't know. It's really hard.
Under the Bridge.
I do like Under the Bridge, but I also really like the Weird Al Yankovic parody of it.
Okay, so moving back into metal, we've established that a lot of people that don't understand metal or don't know metal think that all metal is.
But that's a perfect impression I couldn't have done.
I don't know if you can hear me coughing about 3 feet away from the microphone there.
I came in through Maiden and Metallica, which I think is probably quite a common way that people get into it. They're very big, famous bands.
I would say they're the 2 biggest, most famous bands in metal history.
Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that. They're massive.
I mean, you've got bands like Black Sabbath, but honestly, they don't come quite to the sheer level of popularity or material that Iron Maiden and Metallica produced.
They're also still like touring, doing pretty massive shows when they do.
Yes.
So, and I think, Metallica was on in London only a few weeks ago. One of my colleagues went. And I think, have they got a new album out now?
Oh, I've got no idea, mate. I'm not a Metallica fan.
My colleague who went to see them, because I haven't actually listened to that new album yet, he said that they're really kind of, that they had that period where people were like, oh, they're a bit rubbish. And then after Death Magnetic onwards, they've been really rediscovering what made them good originally and kind of going back to their roots a bit and not kind of faffing about a bit. Maiden had one like last year, so they're still releasing new stuff as well.
Have they discovered a second bass riff yet?
I'm not sure.
Because they do have one bass riff. Every Iron Maiden bass riff that I've ever heard is just the 3-strum, that sounds like a galloping horse.
Triplets.
And it is the unique Maiden sound.
They really like their triplets. I mean, I can't play guitar well enough to play any of that stuff, so I can't really play guitar very well. I've got one. I
would say maybe my favourite Maiden song, because I'm not a big Maiden fan, it's probably The Trooper, and that's because of Guitar Hero.
Yeah, I like The Trooper. I really like... Brain's gone blank. I can see the album.
Stuff like Number of the Beast I never got into.
I like Number of the Beast, but was it Fear of the Dark?
For me, for you, it's just like, what is that about?
I love Fear of the Dark. Number of the Beast, one of the things I really like about Number of the Beasts is the opening bit where it's like, they're just reading that. I'm not sure if it's actually a Bible passage or if it's a thing that an American pastor said and they've like re-recorded it in a interesting voice, like 666, the number of the beast. All that is great.
And, Metallica I never really got massively into. It took me years to start liking Enter Sandman, which I now consider a great song, but for years I just didn't like it. One is a good song. I like Saint Anger, the song. I know that is probably the least popular Metallica album out there. Yeah,
it's there, and what's the one that was before it? I always forget the name of, because St. Anger is the one that famously people don't like, but there was the one before it.
Yeah, whereas the Black Album is considered the most important album in metal history by a lot of pundits.
In fact, Master of Puppets just got entered into, I think it was like the first metal album to get entered into some kind of Hall of Fame I saw the other day. So they're being rewarded nowadays for the impact they had, being a big metal band.
But I mean, to dive into metal a bit further beyond Iron Maiden and Metallica, we've got the death metal bands. Like, who would you place? Let's Google death metal. Like, there's death metal, there's black metal, there's anything from Norway, which is its whole own host of shit.
Death metal is all the bands where you can't read their logos. At the Gates, I know that my colleague mentioned them the other day.
Instrumentation.
Entombed, oh no, that's not the one I've heard of. Cannibal Corpse.
Cannibal Corpse I've heard of.
Pestilence.
There's definitely a theme with the names in there.
They're not called death metal for, without a reason.
Abscess, Abaddon Incarnate, Abhorrence, Abysmal Torment, Abysmal Dawn, Acid Bath. Although, Amonomarth, there's a band I know. I know of Amonomarth.
Opeth.
Yeah, there's just so many of them. Opeth I know of, but I'm not a fan of.
Megadeth is probably one I'm more into. Epica.
I mean, like, at what point does it become black metal?
I don't.
Instead of death metal?
I have generally taken... I know there are some people who get very het up onto the specific definitions. I have just taken that in general I like metal, and I don't really care what the distinctions are underneath. I know that I specifically like power metal, but I don't really care where the edges are.
Power metal for me is at least half the band have to have hair down to the waist.
they're like the modern extension of glam rock.
You need to absolutely wank that fret to death. Like, if your fingers are not all over that neck of that guitar, then you are not playing power metal, you're just playing metal. Like, you would need to be rocketing up and down that with solos all over the place and soaring riffs and wind machines so that your hair splays fantastically in the background as you go over a badly CGI'd battlefield. Maybe a dragon somewhere. That's power metal. Power metal is basically D&D, the musical genre. It's fabulously camp and entertaining, but it is not for everybody.
And I mean, I've put in the list there Symphony X, because they take classic literature and then turn it into crazy power metal tracks, which I love.
Yeah, and I mean, if you compare power metal to death metal, they've got so little in common besides the fact that they have two guitarists, a drummer and a bassist.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not. I mean, power metal really focuses on double bass all the time. Sorry, that's double bass on the drums, not the double bass instrument.
That would be amazing.
So you get really, really super fast drum beats, or bass drum beats in power metal. Whereas, and soaring, very high-pitched vocals a lot of the time, that with long, drawn-out vocals, as opposed to the growling, roaring of death metal, which obviously takes a lot of its influence from hardcore and metalcore. Generally speaking, if you stick core at the end of something, you can guarantee it's going to have some...
Yeah, I was just going to say, on with your point about the lyrics, like power metal, one thing they often do is the lyrics are kind of ethereal and slow compared to the speed of the music.
Yes. Almost operatic.
Yeah, it's kind of operatic, a symphonic kind of thing, and
very dramatic.
I really like that, and I tend to find their lyrics are, as I say, they're often inspired by like classical
Through
works.
the fire and the flames will carry on. Like, if you think the guy is singing about a wizard, it's probably power metal.
Yes.
Like, as a general guideline, if you think he's talking about wizards, warriors, barbarians, orcs, anything like that, probably power metal.
Speaking of orcs, I have to just drop in a mention here of
Is it Necro Goblincon?
No, The Summoning, the only band I believe that is in the genre Tolkien black metal. And they were the first band to use the black speech in a song,
Send me a link to that. Okay. Meanwhile, I'm going to send you Necrogoblincon.
Yeah. The Summoning, like, it's like, Ashnak Impadu, and stuff like that.
The only Necrogoblincon song that I've actually enjoyed is one that's very self-referential and amusing, rather than their other stuff. But basically, they've got a guy dressed as a goblin, and that's their gimmick. But if you spend 4 minutes watching this video, you will appreciate it. The song is called "We Need a Gimmick," and the video goes with it so well. Isn't it amazing how many gimmick acts there are in metal, though? Considering it's a genre that some people take so seriously. Because some metalheads really are, oh, this isn't metal enough. That's not true metal. This is true metal. And there's so many arguments among metalheads about which forms of metal are the best. Yet there's so many gimmick acts. Yeah, Necrogoblicon have a goblin frontman. Ailstorm do pirate stuff.
I love Ailstorm.
Amon Amarth were Vikings. There's so many gimmick acts out there for metal. And so many metal musicians that don't take themselves seriously. Yet so many fans that take them too seriously.
There's some crazy stuff out there. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. He looks like a goblin. I see what you mean.
I don't mean looks like a goblin. That is clearly a goblin, my friend.
That's absolutely ridiculous and brilliant.
But I love the fact that even though he's growling, we need a gimmick. You can clearly audibly hear each syllable. You do know what he's saying despite the growling.
You see, that's the thing I didn't understand when I was younger. I thought black metal was just screaming as well. That was another thing that made me be like, oh, I don't want to listen to it. As I said, I came in through the kind of hard rock metal angle, and I was like, I really like the sound of the instruments. And the first time I got into kind of some of the death metal stuff was someone being like, listen to this guitar, it's really well done. And then I realised I could still hear the lyrics, and I was like, oh, okay, this isn't what I'd assumed.
I saw a really good video on that once, saying that people train themselves, whether they intend to or not, to listen to music a certain way, to hear melodies and lyrics and focus on certain parts of the track. And when they're used to doing that, and they're not used to listening to black metal or death metal or anything of that particular genre, you kind of have to retrain yourself. So the focus in the majority of music, especially popular music, is the singing and the vocals and the lyrics and the melody. Okay, and in metal, the melody does not come from the vocals where people expect it to. So they do not hear any melody from the vocals when it's that's just another layer of the beat.
Yeah.
Right? The melody comes from the guitar. And you have to train yourself to focus on the riff more than the vocals. The vocals are just another part of the composition. They're not actually important for a lot of like death metal. It's all about the instrumentation.
And I think part of the thing that exacerbated that for me was being a singer. Of course I was listening to the lyrics, and I was used to listening to really clever lyrics and stuff like that as well.
And then you got some death metal bands talking about literally dismembering people.
Yeah, so like, yeah, it just didn't appeal at all at the time. And again, I don't really listen to death metal that much at the moment, but yeah, I got into metal when I realised there was more to it than met the eye. And I think a lot of people, as we've already said, a lot of people have that wrong impression of what metal is.
So you also wanted to talk about The Who, and you called The Who hard rock. I would have called them early punk.
So there's some of their stuff, you can see it kind of tending towards metal. Like, I'm talking more about, what's it called? The one that's, brain's gone blank. Really long one, starts with like an organ, it's kind of, Won't Get Fooled Again is the kind of, that later stuff where it feels like you can see the kind of inspiration. And I think it was specifically, was it someone from Metallica? There was an interview that my colleague found where they like specifically cited The Who as one of their influences. So I'm not saying it got necessarily to hard rock at the end, but you can see where it was going. Some of the really early stuff, like My Generation, is nothing like Won't Get Fooled Again. They're very different songs, and I like that they have that range.
Yeah, because I would consider hard rock to be more things in the White Snake or Hailstorm basket.
Oh yeah. This is what I'm saying. It's a precursor to that, and you can see where it was going.
Right.
For me, one of the reasons for The Who is my dad loved The Who, and he got me into The Who.
I loved Pinball Wizard.
Pinball Wizard, I would probably say, is one of my favourite songs of all time. Like, I absolutely love it. If you've seen the music video for the version with Elton John from the movie Tommy, it's absolutely ridiculous.
I have not.
I'll find that to send to you now. Elton John on these massive high heels with like a pinball hat. Songs where I know all the lyrics off by heart, that is definitely one. You can tell from that thumbnail of his glasses how ridiculous it's going to be.
He's an ugly ass man. Like Elton John would never have made it in the modern music industry. He's just not physically attractive enough.
I think he'd have ended up doing what he kind of tends to do now. He'd have just been a brilliant behind-the-scenes
songwriter for other people.
Doing soundtracks and stuff. Pinball Wizard, we did Rock Band in first year of uni, and I would do a lot of the singing because I didn't mind singing in front of people, but also that was one of those songs where I knew all the lyrics, and I could actually do it at speed and enjoy Pinball Wizard immensely. And it's just a complete... thinking of stupid concepts. It's just a stupid concept, but it's such a brilliant song.
So, like, moving on from The Who into the sort of genre, I would have called it early punk. At least their early material. And I think punk is, once again, a genre where there's a clear divide, okay? So people think punk, and what's the first band that comes to mind if someone says punk to you?
Probably The Clash are in there, and also Did God Save the Queen? Brain's gone blank again.
Sex Pistols, and that's the one I was waiting for. So you've got the Sex Pistols camp, which is, mohawks and tartan and leather and yeah, fuck the system and we're totally not a manufactured band, honest. And then you've got the Ramones. Now, what came first?
I don't actually know, but I'm going to go with the Ramones, if you're asking that question.
I'm pretty sure it was the Ramones. I'm going to find out now, so I don't seem like an absolute moron if I'm wrong. So the Ramones, 1974. Sex Pistols, 1975.
Yeah.
Very different bands, very different styles, yet both definitely punk. But I would say, in terms of influencing the majority of the punk or punk rock music that came after them for generations, the Ramones were far more influential.
My dad had a punk album, the best punk album in the world ever, I think it was called. It's one of these Virgin compilations you could get in the mid-90s. And I don't even think the Ramones were on that album, so I just weren't aware they were a thing. Are the Ramones American?
So if you look at where punk went after those two bands, you still got the Clash stuff, but then you've got Rancid, and then you've got other bands in that ilk, and then you get into the early 90s and you've got Green Day and you've got Blink and you've got that genre that explodes in the late 90s and becomes poppier but still has the punk elements. And I would say, what would you say the core thing for punk is to you? What makes it punk?
It's that kind of... Well, sorry, I was about to say it's alternative, but then alternative is also a kind of thing of... I think punk is that kind of railing against the system is what I associate with it.
So I would say, for something to be punk, there has to be attitude.
Yeah.
And there has to be rebellion.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you're rebelling against, but you have to be rebelling against something. But it just exploded in the 90s with... bands like Bad Religion that really took off in the surfing and skating scene because people started to splice footage of skateboarders and surfers with punk tracks, and it just worked. There's a really good documentary on it I recommend people pick up, which I'll get the name of now. It's definitely not Punk's Not Dead, because it's to do with the postcode, I think.
Right. What, a postcode in London? Or...
No, it's an American.
Oh, right, okay. Because I know there was a lot of punk in the UK started in London, kind of people living in, bedsits and stuff, and feeling like I think there was a lot of anger against Thatcher and things like that going on that fed into their music.
There's a lot of good stuff. But that said, the British and the American styles are quite different.
Oh, yeah.
And I do find that very interesting. And then what happens when you cross genres as well? So when Tim from Rancid came to the UK in the 90s, he fell in love with the UK garage scene, would you believe it? And that's a genre that if you're not from the UK, you won't know exists. And that is where the band The Transplants comes from.
I don't think I've heard of The Transplants.
You don't know The Transplants? Okay.
I've heard of the Amateur Transplants, but that's a very different thing.
It's Tim from Rancid and Travis from Blink.
Oh, okay. This is when it comes through and I immediately recognise the track, but forgot who the artist was. I do that a lot.
Well, you recognise Rancid, don't you?
Yeah. Again, I wasn't super into that kind of stuff when it came out.
Oh, I love
But I got
Rancid.
into it later because I had a lot of friends.
Yes.
Friends who were really into Blink and stuff like that.
Tail end of secondary school, I really fell in love with Rancid. Fall Back Down, etc. Time Bomb, Ruby Soho. They've recently released a new album, by the way.
I recognise this kind of sound, but I'm not sure if I've listened to Transplants.
So what he tried to do was fuse the punk he loved with the British garage sound, which we'll put in some links to some garage music for any of you that don't know what it is. There's garage, there's jungle, they're all forms of derivatives of drum and bass. Never been my thing. My stepbrother used to listen to it all the time when he was older and bigger than me, so I had to put up with it. Very electronic, very synthesized, very fast drum beats, very bad rapping sometimes. I mean, moving on, you've got Kirsty MacColl.
Yeah, so I put her in here because I realised I was going very kind of rock and metal. And Kirsty MacColl is just... I don't feel like there are necessarily a lot of female artists the way I listen to... I mean, obviously there are female artists involved in bands, but I don't think there are many individual female artists.
There's a lot of female artists
that I listen to.
That, yeah, I was going to say, that's very much a preference thing. It's not a lack of choice.
No, yeah. I mean, I think it was just something we didn't really listen to at home. I'm aware of things like Joni Mitchell and stuff like that from Love Actually, but I've never heard any of those songs other than in films like that. Kirsty MacColl, people will know her from the very famous Christmas song Fairy Tale of New York. And for many years, that's...
That good uplifting tale.
Yeah, for many years, that's all I knew about her. And then my dad got like a best-of collection. And I was really sad when I found out that actually she'd died saving her children in a jet ski incident where she threw her children out of the way and accidentally got in the way. Was she 27? No, she wasn't. She was a bit older. She had several children, I think. But I was like, oh, there's no more of this. But this best-of album of hers is very good. I've put two songs in there, In These Shoes and England 2, Columbia Nil. In These Shoes is a song about her going around and like talking to different men, and whenever they like proposition her, she's like, in these shoes, as like dismisses it, and then like ends on a kind of interesting note where this guy's like, I want you to walk up and down my spine, and she's like, in these shoes, I doubt you'd survive. Let's do it. And that's just the end of the song. It's brilliant. And then England 2, Columbia Nil is a song where you initially think, oh, she's being screwed over. So the point is, England is completely destroying Colombia in the football, and she's in a pub talking to this bloke, and then she's slowly finding out that actually he's married and he has kids. And she's like, oh, you've lied to me, and you think it's going that one way, and then she's like, well, I didn't mention my kids. I thought I'd wait a bit, and it's kind of about that kind of people are always lying to people, stuff like that. It's just an interesting song. I like the lyrics to that one.
I thought it was going to be more of the stereophonic street. I don't know if you've heard the song As Long As We Beat the English.
I think I have heard that, but yeah, I've not heard all of the stereophonics, but I've got some of their stuff.
So As Long As We Beat the English was a very short track they released one year in a particular slump in Welsh history for rugby when Wales had lost every game in the Six Nations and England had won every game, and the last game was England versus Wales, and England were going to get a grand slam if they win, and Stereophonics released a short track called As Long As We Beat the English.
I think I have heard this at the time, yeah. Yeah, I have heard that. But yeah, I think that kind of stuff is interesting. And actually a band I've not put on this list that are female-led are The Beautiful South. And I think that's another band where people will probably know them for the song Rotterdam or Anywhere, do that one. But they do a song that I really enjoy called Perfect 10, and it's about... they do a lot of songs about love, but they feel more real than the kind of manufactured stuff where it's just, oh, I love you because I love you. It's real people who I think they live I don't know if they're all from Manchester. I think actually she's from London and the rest of the band was from Manchester. But I kind of got into them when I was in Manchester. And they feel really real in their lyrics, which I think goes back to the authenticity thing you were saying earlier. And they do, they do just songs talking about, like they mention Manchester in their lyrics and stuff. So that I associate that with that period of my life as well, which helps.
It just sounds like the Smiths.
They don't sound like the Smiths at all. The Beautiful South are completely different to the Smiths. I do like the Smiths. I do like...
I hold a very unpopular opinion, which is even less popular in Manchester, that Morrissey just sounds horrendously whiny.
I mean, he does sound whiny, but I do enjoy some of the lyrics to his songs.
Oh, to die by your side. What a wonderful way to die. I'm sorry, but like when like emo became a thing, right, and so many people of a certain age group would go, "Oh, stupid emo kids and stupid like emo music," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, have you listened to the Smiths? Like the stuff that you love, The Cure, the Smiths, is as emo as anything emo ever produced, if not more so."
Sorry, I googled while you were talking. Manchester is a song by the Beautiful South. And it's, this is the song I was thinking of. It's just a song where they're talking about places I'd been to in Manchester, essentially. That's why I like it, but it is quite fun.
The other Manchester bands you've got, obviously you can't ignore Oasis.
No, of course not.
Absolute phenomenon that they were. The Stone Roses as well, they really set the trend for those hats, didn't they?
Yes, yeah.
That people still wear. Yeah, people still walk around Manchester with Noel Gallagher haircuts. Like, you can just spot them. If you ever spot anyone with that haircut, you immediately go, that's a Mancunian. Like... It's a Mancunian who never, like, left the 90s as well.
Yeah, I find that kind of funny when you're around. Like, Manchester is a great place. But occasionally you find a few things like that and you're like, it isn't the 90s anymore. Everyone else moved on. We wanted to talk a little bit about, obviously, like, we've spent a lot of time talking about banjo, and I do want to go through some other genres and some things I like, but we still got a bit more of your list to go. Throw stuff in. Pentatonics. Did you know pentatonics before I showed them to you? No, you showed them to me, so feel free to... Okay, pentatonics are something special. Pentatonics formed, and you can go back on YouTube and find it, on an American reality TV sort of competition, like X Factor style, called... So, The Sing-Off. The Sing-Off, okay. They're on season 3 of The Sing-Off, which is like an X Factor show for a cappella. And it was hosted by 2 people whose names I didn't know, and one guy that was from Boyz II Men. Obviously, Boyz II Men, quite a well-known band, Sean Stockman. And they got some really funny comments on there. I think the one I'll never forget, because I went back and rewatched it, or we went back and watched it, was, man, I think you're sent back from the future to save a cappella or something. Yeah, that is definitely what you told me in the car, and then I was like, I've got to go find out who these guys are. What Pentatonics did, I think, revolutionised a cappella as a genre. People were used to, the King singers. Or I think the most revolutionary thing before Pentatonics was probably Van Canto, who did metal. Yep. Battery. But it was still very traditional, like, choir-like performance of it. Pentatonics added in a beatboxer and really messed around with the bass. And between Avi and Kevin, and sadly Avi has now left the band due to the intense touring and recording schedule demands, he couldn't keep up with it. Between the two of them, they just filled so much space, and I don't know how best to describe it. That is the best way I think I can describe it. They just, if you listen to Learn to Love Again, which is their original track, you would think it was EDM. If you could not see them doing it, if you could not spot that it was a cappella, if you just heard it, you would think it was EDM. You would not think it was voices. You would think it was all instruments. It's unbelievable. They did an amazing Daft Punk medley. They've done a lot of good Christmas albums, a lot of good covers. Absolutely incredible group. Cannot recommend them enough. That's Pentatonics. They do have a new bassist now. I'm interested to see how that plays out. I really was a bit of a fan of Avi, but on the bright side, Avi has his own band now. So do check them out. I mean, as a bass singer, I always appreciate good bass, and a lot of pop doesn't have good bass. I mean, in fact, even bass singers in choral stuff, we get to enjoy our low notes, but often we're there in the background. We're not baritones, we're not the tenors, we're not the female voices that are generally taking the melody. So anything that has a really strong bass line in, it's just like, oh, that's amazing. And Avi was good at it. Oh, wow, yeah. Listening, I've only recently had over-ear headphones for the first time, and I was listening to that at work, and I was just like, wow, his voice. Yeah, and it's smooth as well. Oh, yeah, it's a lovely voice. But yeah, no, he now has his own project, which is quite folky, called Avril and the Sequoias. So, yeah, check them out. You want to talk about Jonathan Coulton? Again, talking about music that kind of has gone with the time in my life. Jonathan Coulton, for people who aren't aware, probably the thing he's most famous for is writing the song Still Alive that appeared on the video game Portal. But before that, what he did was he was a software developer who got bored with his life. and started producing music when YouTube was relatively new. And he did this thing called Thing a Week, where he was releasing a new song every week for a whole year. And he released it under a license where people could remix it for their own purposes and use it in stuff. So you got a lot of videos, often these kind of machinima videos where people are using characters in games to act out the songs. There's a famous like World of Warcraft one of that for RE Your Brains, which is a song about zombies. And I just find his lyrics very, very interesting and funny. And I mean, he is generally, I would consider him kind of comedy / geek rock. And I mean, Code Monkey is just a very funny song if you are a software developer. I feel like my life is not quite as sad as that one, but it's about a guy who's a software developer and he doesn't enjoy his job and he really likes the receptionist, but he's no good at flirting. It's kind of a summary of kind of geek life, I suppose, in some ways. And I listened to a lot of his music when I first moved to Manchester and I was starting to make friends again because I didn't have any friends from my undergrad there. And yeah, so it just fits with a particular time in my life, and my housemate's really into him as well, so we tend to listen to all his new stuff.
And that's a great segue. So YouTube, I think, has changed the dynamic on its own. You have artists like this gentleman, like Bo Burnham. Not really a big fan of Bo Burnham, but he's a good example of people who've just skyrocketed in popularity due to a YouTube channel, who've made their own careers possible. You've also got artists like, I'm very much a big fan of Caleb Hyles. Do you know Caleb?
I don't think I do, but if you send me a link.
Well, you like your Disney, don't you?
Oh, is he the guy who used to work at Pixar? No, he's not. Don't worry.
No.
I got him confused with...
Caleb has his own metal band, but that's not what he's known for now. He was known for his original cover of Let It Go, which he entered into competition, did really well on. Caleb's voice is phenomenal. And we'll talk about musicals later, but I think Caleb could have a huge career in musical theatre. A much bigger career than he ever could in just music, because he's so full of character, so expressive, so capable of doing various things with his voice on a stage. I've just sent you his Hunchback of Notre Dame.
You picked the best track because I have performed this with the Musical Theatre Society, so I love this song anyway. Ave Maria. I love that song.
But his voice is so golden.
By the truth, I am justly proud. Oh, he's better than me.
Oh, he's phenomenal, isn't he? You know, and one of his more recent ones was from a new game called Bendy and the Ink Machine.
I think I've heard of it, yeah.
Which he did with Jonathan Young, who, once again, similar. And I think what YouTube has done has actually enabled people to have the ability of making a career out of other people's songs. So Caleb, Nate Wants to Battle, Jonathan Young, Adrisaurus, etc. They've made an absolute killing out of just covering already famous songs, Disney songs, Fall Out Boy songs, etc., video game songs, etc. And, you know, I will listen to Caleb sing all these different songs, and some of them he's better at, some of them he's not as good at, but I will listen to him do it because his voice is good. He doesn't have to produce original material because his voice is such a pleasant instrument.
There's always been that market for good cover songs.
Yes. You could consider anything done by Meatloaf to be a good cover song. Good old Jim Steinman.
Wagnerian rock. You mentioned earlier about the whininess of Morrissey.
Yes.
A similar thing for me is I've always liked Bob Dylan's songs in the lyrics.
Oh, thank God. Thank God someone else has this opinion. Bob Dylan is one of the world's greatest songwriters, but oh my God, he's one of the world's worst singers.
Yeah, I think the only one I really like is The Times They Are A-Changing, because that was the brilliant opening to Watchmen.
Because the times they are... Yeah. So covers of Bob Dylan songs are universally better than Bob Dylan songs.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Yeah. And you know, he's a brilliant songwriter, but there are these amazing covers. And you know, music is about this kind of remixing and changing of stuff with time. Sometimes you want someone to come along and rewrite something for the modern era using old lyrics. So
on YouTube, you've also got Jonathan Young, who does pop punk covers of various things. It's a great pop punk cover of some Disney tracks, such as Under the Sea. Fantastic job. Or metal covers of various things. You like your power metal. Pellicay does power metal covers of anything people request.
I'm just going to mention, the guy I was thinking of earlier was Nick Pitera, who I believe used to work at Pixar, and he did, I'll send you this link and I'll put it in the show notes, he did a one-man Disney movie, and he also did really good Les Mis mix.
Okay, and big shout out to one of my favourite musical artists of recent years, Gav at Miracle of Sound. He's a nice enough guy that whenever I've messaged him, despite just being a random guy, message him on Facebook, he has responded. Miracle of Sound started off doing, I think his first big hit was Commander Shepard. Have you heard Commander Shepard?
I think you've mentioned it to me, but I'm not sure.
You can fight like a Krogan, run like a leopard, but you'll never be better than Commander Shepard. Miracle of Sound is fucking brilliant at fitting a song to a game. So, he's done Zelda's Breath into the Wild. Dragon Age Inquisition ones are very much like orchestral. His Bioshock ones are very cross-genre. Dishonored feels very steampunky. His Gears of War ones are strictly metal. And whatever he produces, you can guarantee it fits the material it's representing. His Red Dead Redemption one was blues. And he's so cross-genre, and he is, or at least was a couple of years ago, I read an article stating that he was now the most successful independent music artist in Ireland.
Wow, okay, yeah, that's cool. I mean, I just listened to a bit of that song you sent me, and I can see what you mean. Because the first thing I heard... It
sounds like Mass Effect.
Yeah, it sounds like Mass Effect. The first thing I'd heard was his Game of Thrones Jon Snow song, which he's just released. And that sounded like it was something from Game of Thrones. So I can see the very different styles, and he's done
Half-Man's song is probably his best Game of Thrones one. His Deus Ex stuff is really good. Slave to the New Black Gold. He's just incredible. He's so talented. He's so good. And I would say the other YouTube guy, I would say, he's significantly less popular. Have I shown you before Ken Ashcorp?
Don't recognise the name, but I wouldn't be surprised if you send me a link.
So, Ken Ashcorp is the only person I know who wrote a song about going out to get a burger and made it sound great.
You've definitely told me this story, whether or not that means I've listened to it or not.
His self-confessed thing is that he writes stuff about things on the internet that he likes that other people that would never receive exposure otherwise, it's very much he has a persona. I'm not a furry, I'm not into fur scene. He has a persona. That is his thing, is a panda called Kenny. He has a song called Touch Fluffy Tail. It's a great song. I don't care if it's about something that I'm not interested in. He's got a song about My Little Pony. I have never seen an episode of My Little Pony in my life, but I would play 20% Cooler on my CD player. Ride Roar Riot was about his favourite wrestler. And it's all just good music with really good beats. He won the 2011 BlizzCon Song Contest for PvP. Supernatural is a decent one. Cherry Boy Rap Riot I quite like. It was about an anime called Panty and Knee Socks. I think he's a great little artist with quite a unique style.
That PvP song, that really reminds me of a kind of British band, and I can't remember who it is off the top of my head.
And he's just good. I listen to him an awful lot, and I first heard him through a song he did. My friends watch StarCraft streams. So you watch StarCraft streams, yeah?
I don't watch them, but I'm aware of them. I have watched a bit.
Are you familiar with Artosis or Tasteless?
No, I'm not to that level. I don't know people who are good at it.
Artosis and Tasteless are the two commentators.
Right, okay.
He wrote songs about each of them. For example, Tasteless was Nick, Tasteless Plot, your commentary is getting me so hot, got neurosis from Artosis, something to bunker rush my heart. And Artosis was ARTOSIS, rolling like a goddamn baneling nest. And they're just such great little melodies and stuff. And they're literally just tribute songs to people he likes on the internet. He did one too. Do you know Ego Raptor?
Yes, I do know Ego Raptor.
Okay, so Ego Raptor is a guy called Aaron Hansen. And he wrote a song called Aaron Hansen's a Goddamn Badass for his birthday.
That's awesome.
And it starts off, it goes, last year you're 23, this year you're 24. And then he says, oh shit, I accidentally put your name in the song, so you can't use it again every year. Oh well.
I assume you're aware of Starbomb.
Yes, which I believe that Aaron Hansen is in, isn't he?
Well, he's sung on some tracks, and my favourite bit is just the one where he's a dragon and he sings, I am a dragon.
I particularly like the Legend of Zelda rap. Where the old man and the swing. Dangerous to go alone. Take this. No, goddammit, old man. And they also did the brief plot of. Have you seen the brief plot ofs?
No, I don't think I have. Actually.
Okay, so played Final Fantasy VII, haven't you?
Yes, yeah.
So he's done stuff for this for like Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy. It's the simple plot of.
Sorry, there's Starbomb, there's also Danny Sexbang. I can't remember if they're separate.
And there's Ninja Sex Party.
Ninja Sex Party, that's it, yes. Sorry, the I Am a Dragon bit is from Ninja Sex Party.
With the no pants dance. I like the way that you dance with your pants off.
I wouldn't be let off if I didn't correct myself on that, because Beth would tell me off for a start. But she went to see them recently. I remember Ego Raptor before he did these simple plots of, he did...
he did Metal Gear Awesome.
Yeah, Metal Gear Awesome, which is amazing. I'm the strategy guide.
I know how to climb a goddamn ladder. So, what the internet has done is it's opened up two things. One is the ability for people to make a living just doing cover songs of things they like. Two is a whole new nerd music.
Yeah.
You would not have got nerdcore without the internet. For anyone who doesn't know nerdcore, it's a particular type of nerd rap. See MC Frontalot for a famous example. It opened up things like Starbomb and the Megas writing songs about computer games. It opened up things like for Still Lives go viral, and it's just opened up a whole genre of parodies, etc. Nate Wants the Battle's written so many songs about Minecraft. Instalock wrote lots of parody songs about League of Legends. Things that people who are into these things started listening to that would never have been played on a radio because they're just not mainstream enough and people wouldn't have got it.
And there's other stuff out there as well. I mean, not just the nerd stuff, but like there's it is kind of nerdy, but Epic Rap Battles of History is getting... Yeah, gets out history in a different way to people who might not have cared before.
And having met Nice Peter, I can assure you, he is genuinely a really nice guy.
That's good to know. I always like it when you hear those kind of stories about people.
Yeah, no, Epic Rap Battles of History was great fun. Is it good music? Maybe not. Not if you just sit and analyse it, but it's just entertaining. It's good entertainment. So, yeah, let's talk about a few maybe musicians who aren't in your lists or aren't in the genres we talked about. Hip-hop and rap. I'm not entirely sure if there's a difference. Sure there is. We both mentioned we like Eminem. I think a lot of people like Eminem. I very much like Dre, but I don't like Snoop. I tend to prefer the West Coast to the East Coast stuff from that time period as well. I don't tend to like lazy rap, slow, drawn out, drawling rap, like Snoop style. I tend to like my rap angry. Have you listened to much Childish Gambino?
I've heard of them, but that's it. I'm not super into hip-hop or rap.
All you need to know is that he's Troy from Community.
Oh, right. Okay, yes. I'm sure I'd enjoy that.
His first album is absolutely phenomenal. Kendrick Lamar, I'm not a huge fan of, but I've got respect for. Rap in recent years has really moved away from the whole gangster rap stuff. Kendrick, Childish, and Macklemore are really big for talking about social issues. And once again, Macklemore's great fun.
As I say, Macklemore is probably the only one I've really listened to fairly recently.
Childish and Kendrick are probably better, but I think what really makes Macklemore the level he is Ryan Lewis's production. His hooks, the horn sections he puts in, the stuff he does with the music, Ryan Lewis makes Macklemore what he is, I think. Macklemore's great, but Ryan Lewis takes him to that next level. So yeah, that rap has, in my very limited experience, been moving away from that. I really can't get into grime.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only aware of grime via the Corbyn for Grime hashtag that we discussed in our general election episode, so I don't really know any of it at all.
So I've been sent 4 owls, and I, honest to God, sent it back with, I think this is one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. I'll find the track for you. I don't think rap works with British people. I think Stormzy's huge right now. I can't understand why. I think he's got a terrible flow. He's got a terrible beat. He's not got a nice voice. Bugsy Malone is alright. He's from Manchester. He's got a song called MEN. I'd advise people to check that out. But then he's got another song called Batman Ting about his black tracksuit. That is terrible. Grime is like UK hip-hop, but I think there's something fundamental about hip-hop culture that doesn't translate to British people. I think that's why grime is different to it and why it is not generally as good.
I mean, that 4 hours one, having listened to a little bit, I just like...
terrible.
Yeah, I feel there's something wrong. There's something about their voices doesn't quite work with as it is.
Why are they singing so badly alongside that sample as well? But it's an accent thing as well, isn't it? In the same way, you can't sing bluegrass without a South American accent. I'm sorry, it don't work. Most British people, if they try and rap, they sound terrible because the accent's just not made for it.
But Bugsy Malone... Sorry, I just listened to that Bugsy Malone track. Sorry for being all over the place here when you're sending me stuff. But yeah, that sounds legitimately good. It's not my...
That sounds authentic.
Not my kind of music, but yeah, compared to the 4 hours, I was like, weird. I mean, sometimes a different accent can do stuff if you kind of go with it. So I'm obviously referencing Guns Don't Kill People, rappers do. Which, you know...
Let's not use Goldie Looking Chain as an example of actual rap.
No, but you can go with it if you have a different accent. Sometimes it will work. And Goldie Looking Chain, brilliant and funny.
Guns don't kill people, rappers do.
Saw it in a documentary on BBC Two.
Oh man, your missus is a nutter.
Things can sound odd or different in a different accent, and sometimes a new take on something can make it fresh and interesting. But
like, for example, of strong accents, Biffy Clyro.
Oh yeah, I like Biffy.
Twin Atlantic. The Dropkick Murphys.
Yes.
Yeah, when you add in that twang, it makes it what it is. And without it, it's not the same. I would say it's the same with a lot of the Norwegian symphonic metal or Scandinavian symphonic metal. A lot of the edge is actually from the accents.
Because all the lyrics are generally in English, but they pronounce the words slightly differently, yeah.
The accent twists it and it gives it a separate cadence and stuff.
Like Sonata Arctica the first word there is sonata, but that's not how they pronounce it. So it's just,
Yes.
That's how, it's fine if that's how they're pronouncing it.
Speaking of symphonic metal, are you familiar with Exit Eden?
I don't think I am.
So Exit Eden is a project from Napalm Records, sorry. They are 4 female singers in the vein of Nightwish et al., symphonic metal, from 4 different countries, from 4 different bands that have sort of been put together into a band to do covers of female pop songs in symphonic metal style.
I found A Question of Time before that one you sent me through by Depeche Mode, and that started sounding awesome. Now I'm going to listen to the one you sent me, which is Rihanna, Unfaith.
Lady Gaga, Chantel, all sorts, Bonnie Tyler. 4 sets of great voices there. I suspect it may be a Tobias Sammet project, because every single one of those women has toured with Avantasia before. So I suspect Tobias Sammet has gone, I've got an idea. And for anyone who doesn't know Tobias Sammet, he is the singer for the German metal band Edguy, and he is the head of Avantasia, which was his project to produce metal opera albums, complete with multiple vocalists singing different characters' parts. They have my favourite ABBA cover ever.
Oh, you're going to have to send that through, because I love my ABBA. I love my opera, so I haven't actually put opera on the list of things to discuss.
See, I went to see one opera once, and I just thought it was terrible. I'll discuss opera with you later, but yeah, no, Lay All Your Love on Me by Avantasia, absolutely amazing cover. It's like taking ABBA and giving it some attitude. It's crisp. I love it.
Ooh.
The riff.
Yeah, I'm already into it. I'm like 12 seconds in. Yeah.
Especially when the drums and the bass start kicking.
Yeah, that's just happened.
Dum 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 dum. So ABBA's another interesting one. My old singing tutor, and yes, I did have one, despite the fact I'm still terrible, insists that ABBA were only a sort of disco pop band in British mixes of the recordings, and that live they were a metal band.
So, because you sent me Lay All Your Love on Me, I also have to send you this version.
Every man I see is a potential threat. How good is that cover?
Oh yeah, that cover was amazing. But I have to send you back the version by Erasure, not Eurasia, as some people.
Yeah, it's going to be very different.
Oh, it's very different. But this is kind of a gay club hit. This kind of a more 80s take on ABBA. And that's one of those songs where I listen.
And for anyone that's not aware, by the way, there is a radio station in Manchester called Gadio.
I didn't know that. That's great. Yeah, I think I came to... I mean, I've always enjoyed ABBA, but I got to appreciate ABBA more when I started listening to things like Chess, which is a musical by Benny and Bjorn that's just superb. I'm mentioning it just so I can put in the brilliantly 80s music video for the Arbiter's song. I thought he was wearing like a skin-coloured chest thing, and then I realised, no, he's just wearing a suit jacket and no shirt.
Are we going to go full Right Said Fred on?
I mean, it's almost at the level, but like, just look at that suit in the thumbnail, and then this song is the most 80s and amazing, with like 3D graphic kind of chessboard and stupid effects.
Don't know if it's more 80s than Oingo Boingo's Little Girls.
Probably not.
Which is the creepiest music video you will ever see in your life. Oh my word. It is quite something. So, yeah, no, some other things that I like. Okay, so we switch away from hip-hop now. If we go directly into the realms of pop, I am a big, unashamed Taylor Swift fan. And that got a reaction of silence from Tom.
I am not really aware of Taylor. Like, no, that's wrong. I'm aware of who Taylor Swift is, but I've not really listened to it.
You can't not be aware of who Taylor Swift is.
Yeah, she's super famous. And apparently she always brings the weather with her.
Can I heavily recommend listening to the album Speak Now and the album Red? Really highly recommend those albums. Her new one I'm not too sold on. She's had to do a massive style revamp because she's been outed as slightly fake. Given that, her feuds with Kanye and Kim and Katy Perry, she's kind of been made out to be a bit of a bitch rather than the sweet innocent girl next door. And they've proven that they're right by using audio recordings, etc. So she's had to, as a clever marketing move, just embrace it.
Yeah, she's gone for the kind of bad
So
girl.
her new album and her new thing is, I'm the bitch. And it's not even like I'm the bad girl or I'm so sexual. It's not what Rihanna did, Good Girl Gone Bad. She's gone full Regina George, and that is not a music reference. That is a movie reference. Because that's how she was described. She's gone, well, you know what, I'm just going to have to own it, otherwise I'm done. Bold move, but Look What You Made Me Do is a terrible song. Really good intro, really bad, like, Look What You Made Me Do. It sounds like she's trying to be Fergie, and Fergie was never great. It's a very odd choice. But her early stuff was very much country and western influenced pop. Very sweet, very heartfelt, lots of love songs, etc. Really good stuff. In terms of country and western, I do like a bit of Blake Shelton, I must admit. There's something, especially when you're in a long-term relationship, wholesome about some bluegrass. You can have songs about falling in love, you can have songs about breaking up, but sometimes it's nice to sit there and listen to a song about domestic bliss. Blake Shelton has a song where the chorus ends in "You name the babies, I'll name the dogs." Like, you plant the flowers, I'll plant the kisses. It's all just domestic bliss in a song. It's pretty heartwarming when you're in a long-term relationship to listen to. But I do maintain every bluegrass, country and western song is about one of the following subjects: driving, whiskey, the moon, falling in love, missing someone, or general sort of being from the south. Those are the only topics covered by bluegrass.
So bluegrass is something I've heard less of, but like traditional kind of country, there's a few. I mean, obviously, Country Roads is a famous song. In fact, I had a really good collection that my dad had that I stole, called Country Roads, and I don't think you can like find that album anymore. But it was just like a selection of really good country hits. Oh, Big Bad John, I always like, because my dad's name is John, so that kind of went with the fact that it was a thing my dad played. But it's about a mine caving in, and there's this guy called Big Bad John, and he gets everyone out. But it's just, again, talking about the kind of deep bass songs that there aren't enough of, in my opinion, as a bass. That's one of them. Is like it's like mostly told as kind of a story as well. It's not necessarily all sung. It's a lot more spoken word, but I really like that song and songs like that, which are very kind of country.
So we've established I very much like a lot of my punk rock. I think a band I've not mentioned is Alkaline Trio. Great band. I like some of my power metal, which have been through some of the metal. I like some of my post-hardcore. So post-hardcore is where you take a lot of your and you mix it with some pop-punky melodic vocals. So you tend to have like a really catchy chorus with a bit of a breakdown and something heavier and something shoutier in the verses. So a great example of that is A Day to Remember. Fantastic band. I really like my third wave ska. Like, I don't mind your original ska, I don't mind your specials and your madness, but my third wave ska is where it's at, which is what happened when you fused pop punk with ska, and you just triple the size of the horn section. You throw some Real Big Fish or Less Than Jake on, and I'm gone. I'm done. I'm in there.
I do like Real Big Fish.
Less Than Jake, I think, are potentially even better.
I've heard of them, but I don't think I've heard much of their stuff.
Yeah, no, if you like Real Big Fish, you'll probably like Less Than Jake, so check them out. I like a bit of old swing. You stick some Sinatra on, some Rat Pack.
I really like old swing, and I feel it's less of a thing over here, but it's big in America, and when I've been in the States, it's quite easy to find a restaurant that will just play a load of old Rat Pack stuff. But I don't know if you've heard Swing When You're Winning, Robbie Williams' swing album?
No.
That's really good. I have a friend who's really into his swing, and he was like, I don't care about anything else Robbie Williams has done, but this album, and that was really, really good.
Have you heard Rock Swings by Paul Anka?
Don't think I have.
Oh, you are in for a treat, my son. You like your rock music, so you'll recognise nearly all of the songs. For example, I'm going to wait for your exclamation of surprise.
Slightly ruined, I think, by the fact it has the title there, but...
Yeah, but I'm saying you're going to enjoy it. It's not something you'd expect it to be done in that style. But yeah, he did an album called... He's a big swing singer. He did an album called Rock Sings, and 3 tracks I pulled out of Tom are Smells Like Teen Spirit, Wonderwall, and Black Hole Sun. All done in full swing.
I think I'm really going to enjoy Black Hole Sun. I mean, I'm sure I'll enjoy all these tracks, but Black Hole Sun, I can really see how that would work as a swing track. Have you ever been out in Coventry?
No.
There's a place called Casbah, as in rock there. And they always used to have, they'd have like the main dance floor would be playing the kind of more common stuff. They had like a small bar that would have like a live band, and they had like a room that was always like rock. And then upstairs there was a bar that often had just like swing versions of tracks playing, and it was quite quiet in the background. It was a place you could collect your thoughts and chat to people. But then you'd suddenly just hear like, oh, I recognise that lyric, and it probably was this guy. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. Because that kind of stuff was on in the background all the time, which was really cool.
So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of Zebrahead in the punk rock scene as well. I've seen them probably 8 times. Seen Born Sleep 9 times. Patent Pending are one of the pop punk bands I really fell in love with recently due to an EP called Mario and the Brick Breakers, which has its own half-hour comedy short documentary about a plumber named Mario who makes it big in the punk rock scene with his band, the Brick Breakers. Some really good stuff on there. If you haven't seen that, I recommend it. What else have I got? I really like Rag and Bone Man since he's come out. I think he brings a very American style as a British man, but does a great job of it. I assume you've heard Rag and Bone Man.
Yeah,
he's something special with his voice. Adele, her voice is amazing, but I can't say I've ever listened to a full album.
No, I've heard a few of her songs, but that's...
I had a conversation with my friend recently saying, do you think Taylor Swift's the biggest female artist on the planet in the modern era? And he said not even close. He says Adele more than quadruples her album sales, and I was surprised to hear that.
Big Bad Voodoo Daddy was the band I was thinking of.
Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, that sounds phenomenal.
contemporary swing revival band from Southern California.
Streetlight Manifesto is another ska band I like.
I don't think I've heard of them.
I like a lot of my hard rock, Hailstorm. I like Sonic Boom 6, who kind of mixed garage, ska, and rock and punk. They were a really good Manchester band. I don't know if you know Sonic Boom 6.
I've heard the name, but that doesn't necessarily mean I know who they are. You send me that, and I will send you Mr. Pinstripe Suit by Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. I think the reason I got into swing was the movie The Mask. I think that really helped the kind of revival of it.
Yeah, I can see that. Sonic Boom 6 have quite a unique sound, similar to... I was not say similar, but it's in the same way that Skindred, if you know Skindred, have a very unique sound where they've mixed so many genres, it's kind of hard to tell what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But it's very British, I can tell you that much. I really like this Big Bad Voodoo Daddy stuff. This is getting downloaded.
I think I might have to listen to more of Sonic Boom 6.
Very unique, I'd say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'd have to listen to... Like, first impressions, I'm intrigued. But I'd have to listen to more of it to see if it's something I could listen to.
But you see what I mean when I say it sounds like the mixed garage and ska?
Oh, yeah. Like, it sounds kind of like Garage Madness, something else. You know, I can see the influence there. It's very interesting.
But yeah, the one underneath that is particularly... If you listen to it, the song is Manchester on a Night Out. That's what it is. It's what it's supposed to be, and it's perfect. So I was like, I didn't want my night to end like this. I just wanted to sit on the top deck and eat my chips.
That's a bit different to the other track, but yeah, I can see that. I'm going to have to listen to more of that.
But yeah, as it goes, it's describing all the people in Manchester on a Friday night, and it says, you see them lining up to Howl at the Moon, singing Wonderwall out of tune.
Every single time.
But it's all about strange transformations and werewolves, and saying that basically the people in Manchester turn into monsters when they go out on a Friday or Saturday night.
That track actually reminded me of another band that I haven't put on my list that I got into fairly recently. Have you heard of Public Service Broadcasting?
Well, I know of Public Service Broadcasting, but I don't know a band.
There's a band called Public Service Broadcasting, and the reason it reminded me is that particular track, that kind of spoken, almost narrated style. Public Service Broadcasting don't sing on any of their tracks. They use old recordings, and each album has a theme. And
just sort of remix it.
I think I sent you the other day in when we were playing the RPG, I sent a link to the one where they talk about coal mining set in Wales, which is their most recent album. But this is the one I first saw of theirs, which is about Yuri Gagarin. And it's a brilliant video of two guys dancing in a spacesuit, which, you know, I'm always down for that kind of thing. And it's just, this entire album called Race for Space is full of like famous stuff, like they have JFK's speech and stuff mixed into music, and I just find that really interesting.
So in terms of instrumental stuff, Explosions in the Sky are well worth listening to. They're really good.
I've not heard of them, so feel free to pass
Explosions
some stuff
through. Explosions in the Sky. I'll find you one.
This is going to have the most show notes of an episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, it needs to.
Oh yeah, it needs it. And people are going to want to listen and then pause and listen to the tracks. As I say, I'll try and maybe throw in clips when it's relevant.
So Explosion in the Sky is something, if you click that, you can leave it on in the background without getting too distracted. It's very chill.
Oh yeah, it's slow, and I can see how it can build over time. But
yeah, it's nice stuff background sometimes, very emotive. But yeah, no, I like music. It was a huge part of my life for a very long time. It's less so now. I do a lot of... I very much, though, where other people tended to put a film or TV on in the background, I cannot stand watching the same thing that I've already watched without like a year or two in between. So I generally will have music on in the background if I'm cleaning, if I'm doing anything, if I'm working. It's always music. It's never TV or film, because if it's TV or film, I want to watch it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, music, especially during my studies, it was an important part. In my last job, it kind of felt a bit... I did sometimes when I really needed to concentrate, but it felt weird in an open plan office, just bunging my headphones in and ignoring everyone. Whereas now we're in a smaller offices again in my new job. Everyone has a nice set of headphones and just listens to music, which I quite like. It allows me to focus on code with the kind of more instrumental stuff and power metal, as we said.
Yeah, so, you know, that was a long ramble about music I've had tonight.
Over 2 hours.
Good ramble. It's indefinite. There is no end to a discussion about music. There's so much of it out there. There's thousands of years of it. There's so much of it being produced every single day. I'm really glad we live in a world where it's so accessible, where you can see so much of it. I think that also places a lot of pressure on artists to try and be original, and I think we really have to highlight that originality is just doing something in a new way. You can't do something new. It's almost impossible. I think last time I can think of anything being quote-unquote new was the really deep reverb bass noises in dubstep.
Yes.
I think that's the last big musical innovation I heard. Music is just doing something that people have forgotten about now. Originality is doing something people have forgotten about, or doing it in a new way, or mixing things. And I don't think you have to be original. I think you just have to have heart, because there's only so original you can be. And thanks to the way copyright law works as well, it's just increasingly more difficult to produce anything without getting called out on any sort of lack of originality. Yeah, everything has been done. you just have to put a new twist on it. I really wish that I had the patience to learn an instrument. I'm so passionate about music, but I just can't. I don't have the patience to do it, to practice it. But, my housemate's, he's got his master's in it. He's unfortunately in Spain right now, otherwise I would have invited him to the podcast. He has found that studying it thoroughly has made him, to some extent, enjoy some of it less, because he can't listen to something without analysing it anymore. No,
I mean, I can see that. I mean, I know many people who've learnt music to various levels, because especially kind of people I've met through choir, and yeah, they'll be like, it's this, and sometimes I feel like I'm glad I don't know all of the ins and outs of how music works. I can just sit back and enjoy, let it wash it over me. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for joining us on The Hat of Many Things for this first introduction to music. We're going to put individual genres in here for really deeper discussion.
I'm going to throw classical and musicals into that as the first one we should talk about, because it's one of the things we didn't get to talk about this episode.
There's also diegetic music that goes into things like video game music, TV music, movie soundtracks, music that you can consume in an OST if you really enjoy the music, but that is not actually designed to be consumed on its own as a piece of media. Lord of the Rings has an amazing soundtrack, but it's not designed to be listened to. It's designed to be supplementing a visual image. That is how it is designed. It's how it's constructed. It's kind of like listening to it without watching the film is you can enjoy it, but it's like reading a Shakespeare play without seeing it on the stage. It's not the way in which it's meant to be consumed, and you will be missing something.
Depends how many times you watch the movies, because you can start to remember all the scenes.
My point is, if you've never seen the movies.
Yes, no, I appreciate that.
A play is designed to be acted out. A diegetic music is designed to be played alongside something.
Musicals are, you need to go see the musical. I mean, great though some soundtracks are. I mean, I've listened to Hamilton. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. My ticket's for February, but the stuff like that, people will obsess over a lot of musicals before it's even possible to get tickets to see them.
So there's lots of stuff out there. But we're going to pull our next topic out of the hi-hat now. And we're going to be revising this list actually in the coming weeks to try and see what we need to prune or add to it. If you've got more suggestions, as always, we really implore you. There's a small subreddit. There's a Facebook page. There's a website. You can get in touch with us via any of these mediums. There's a Twitter, I believe. So if you get in touch with us via any of these things, all of the details can be found on our website, which Tom will rattle off the link to very shortly.
Yep, thehatofmanythings.com will take you there.
So thehatofmanythings.com will take you to all of these links. You can suggest what you want us to talk about, what you want to hear us talk about. I'm really grateful that people are tuning in, that people are listening to us talk. We really, really want that feedback. So please do get in touch with us. I assure you we will respond.
To show you how far the genre can go, I've picked from the hat politics again. So we're back to one of our first topics.
Excellent. We can discuss the progress or lack thereof of Brexit. Is it just politics? Sorry, what's the sub?
We've got two possible subcategories. So let me just.
I think that's too small. I think we're going to stick with politics for now. In between now and the next podcast, we will fill out those subcategories and we will announce at the start of the next podcast the specific political subject.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Yeah, make it more random. Yeah,
because 1 out of 2, this list was compiled a while ago. Politics has moved on. So once again, thank you for joining us. I've been Mike. This has been
Tom. And
we are your hosts for The Hat of Many Things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank everyone. I would like to thank everyone for listening, and hope to...
I'd like to thank Boston. I don't know why. I just think that it's appropriate.
What, the city or the band?
The city. I think that Boston's a great place. I've never been. I don't know anything about it. I just, normally it's when you finish a speech, you thank someone specific.
It's not sob backwards.
That is...
It's like America's Bolton.
Right, I'm done. I'm done. Thank you and good night.
Beata Maria, you know I am a righteous man. Of my virtue I am justly proud. Beata Maria, You know I'm so much purer than the common, vulgar, weak, licentious crowd. Then tell me, Maria, why I see her dancing there, why her smouldering eyes still scorch my soul. I feel her, I see her, the sun caught in her raven hair is blazing in me out of all control. Like fire, hellfire, this fire in my skin, this burning desire is turning me to sin. It's not my fault, I'm not to blame. It is the gypsy girl, the witch, who sent this flame. It's not my fault, if in God's plan He made the devil so much stronger than a man. Protect me, Maria, don't let this siren cast her spell, don't let her fire sear my flesh and bone. Destroy Esmeralda, and let her taste the fires of hell, or else let her be mine and mine alone. Minister Frollo, the gypsy has escaped. What? She's nowhere in the cathedral. She's gone. But how? Never mind. Get out, you idiot! I'll find her. I'll find her if I have to burn down all of Paris. Hellfire, dark fire. Now, gypsy, it's your turn. Choose me or your pyre. Be mine or you will burn. God have mercy on her. God have mercy on me. But she will be mine or she